What's going on, guys? This is Rob. Welcome back to Comics Explained, and everybody's making list videos again. Time to hop on the bandwagon. So here are the top 10 characters in Marvel Comics that are too powerful for the MCU, meaning if the Marvel Cinematic Universe were going to put them into the films, they'd have to reduce their power in order to tell compelling stories. Now, if you guys want a more comprehensive discussion on these various characters and more, make sure you check out our playlist, which you'll find in the description, called Too Powerful for the MCU. Perfectly titled, right? So kicking things off at number 10 on our list is the Void. Now, some of you guys may not know who the Void is, and the Void is incredibly powerful. People who do know who the Void is are probably just like, damn, this is what you're starting your list off with? Okay, this list is gonna be nuts. When it comes to the Void, think of like somebody in Marvel Comics who's basically a little more powerful than Superman, but never holds back and doesn't care who they hurt. And that's what the Void is. The long and short of this is that in Marvel Comics, there's a guy named Robert Reynolds, and Robert Reynolds consumed a serum, which basically was an attempt to recreate the super soldier serum that turned Steve Rogers into Captain America. He ended up becoming way more powerful than Captain America and took on the superhero name the Sentry. The problem with this is that Robert Reynolds has multiple personality disorder, or dissociative identity disorder as it's known in this day and age, and basically the Void is his evil alter ego. Now, the Void has done all kinds of crazy things in Marvel Comics. The Void has taken on a full contingent of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and the Avengers at the same time, and they were powerless to stop him. The Incredible Hulk is afraid of the Void, but as probably the greatest display of the Void's power, it was actually an alternate reality story, which was basically an alternate telling of the conclusion of the events of Siege on Asgard, which of course was a story where basically Asgard was attacked. The Void ended up manifesting at the end of that conflict and basically killed everybody on Earth. All the superheroes and like Loki and Thor and all the Asgardians, and then just ascended out into the universe where it presumably proceeded to kill Galactus and all the cosmic entities and basically take over the entirety of the universe. This guy was pretty broken. But coming in at number 9 on our list, the Tryon Juggernaut. So in Marvel Comics and in his base form, Cain Marko is basically just a guy who took an object called the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which imbued him with all kinds of crazy enhancements, the most notable of which being whenever the Juggernaut starts to move, nothing can stop it. The only exception to that is when the Incredible Hulk did it once. Even though it was a really cool moment, it still seemed a little weird. But you've also had 8th Day Juggernaut, which is basically when the Juggernaut's powers are enhanced, and then Tryon, which is the most powerful version of his character that we've ever seen. The idea behind this is that Juggernaut was possessed by a spirit called the Tryon, and using the power of the Juggernaut combined with its own insane level of power, Tryon Juggernaut was able to punch holes in reality, literally punching cracks in the universe. This guy is number 9 on our list. Just to give you perspective on how powerful the people on this list are going to become. But moving on to number 8, we have Sidorak. Now, Sidorak is a ridiculously powerful character, so much so that even characters like Dormammu draw on the power of Sidorak by using things like the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. He's basically confined within his own dimension called the Crimson Dimension, but if this guy were to ever escape his reality and enter into the main Marvel universe at full power, he would be unstoppable. It was even confirmed by Stephen Strange that nothing in the universe could stop the power of this guy. The cosmic entities couldn't stop him, Galactus couldn't stop him. He would basically bring about the end of all things. But coming in at number 7, our discussion on Sidorak is a little scant there, I will admit, but coming in at number 7 is Dormammu empowered Galactus. Yes, there is a point in Marvel Comics when Galactus is empowered by Dormammu by basically consuming him. Pray tell how this story unfolds and Galactus becomes so powerful. So what ended up happening is that Galactus shows up to a world to consume it, as Galactus normally does. But on this world was a guy named Zoloz. In an effort to basically save his world, Zoloz sneaks off to the home of Stephen Strange, steals a bunch of magical artifacts, and then using the power of those artifacts, whisks Galactus away from the main Marvel universe itself and into the mystical realms. This leads to Mephisto basically going to Dormammu and saying, hey, you can control Galactus, and if you have the power of Galactus, well, you can basically do anything. And Dormammu, always looking to expand beyond the dark dimension and conquer the entirety of the universe, meets with Galactus, and Galactus immediately consumes him and basically absorbs all the magical power of Dormammu. So it's effectively Galactus with Dormammu Dormammu's power. There was a point where Galactus almost escaped into the entirety of the multiverse, and had that happened, everything would have fallen before the power of Galactus wielding the power of Dormammu. He would have taken over and conquered and probably even consumed and destroyed the entirety of the multiverse in Marvel Comics. Now, coming in at number 6 on our list, and I know people who are familiar with this character are going to kind of be like, really? Number 6? You're putting this guy ahead of Dormammu-empowered Galactus? Yes, and bear with me here. There's a reason why. Heart of the Monster Hulk, also known as like Worldbreaker Hulk 2.0. Now, a lot of you guys have heard of the story, World War Hulk, where the Incredible Hulk was just more pissed off than he's ever been. Heart of the Monster Hulk takes it to the next level, and it's the strongest we've ever seen the Incredible Hulk in the history of Marvel Comics. Interestingly enough, we have a video on it here at Comics Explained that you're welcome to check out once you're done watching this video. But the idea behind Heart of the Monster Hulk is that basically Bruce Banner finds a wishing well and literally wishes to be able to just fight forever, essentially. But the thing behind this is that this is the strongest the Hulk has ever been. And even Stephen Strange and everybody who was observing it came to the realization there was basically no stopping this guy. The only person with the power to stop Heart of the Monster Hulk was Heart of the Monster Hulk. I mean, the guy just looked ridiculously OP. In fact, Umar, who was ruling the Dark Dimension at the time, actually fled her own dimension and went to Stephen Strange and asked for help in order to have Stephen Strange find some way to defeat Heart of the Monster Hulk. There was no way to stop this guy. He was basically breaking the Dark Dimension. Imagine somebody going into the realm of Dormammu, or even Umar, who, depending on who it is that's writing the story, is sometimes even more powerful than Dormammu, and basically overpowering their realm and even breaking their realm just based on how powerful they are. None of the magical energy that Umar had worked. That there was no conceivable way to stop this guy. Now, ultimately, they ended up just draining the gamma radiation off of Banner, and then he reverted back into his normal form. But the fact remains, it's a ridiculously powerful version of the Hulk that not even a being comparable in power to Dormammu had the ability to stop. Coming in at number 5 on our list, and this is going to be an interesting situation. I'm curious to see how people will react to it. Hope Summers and/or Synch. And there's a reason for this. I know a lot of people who are familiar with these characters are kind of like, what? Why in the world would you pick them? Because of the powers that they have. So when it comes to these two characters, they have the ability to duplicate the powers of anyone they see, and they can do this for an indefinite amount of time, and there's no defined upper limit to the power they can duplicate. We haven't necessarily seen them copy the powers of Galactus, but there's no reason to believe they can't. And if this is something that they can do, I know I'm kind of cooking the books a bit, right? Just let me have my moment here. I really wanted them on the list, but if they had the ability to duplicate the powers of Galactus or Eternity or Infinity, any of the cosmic entities, they would rival them in power. Very similar to Protege, and in fact, we could include Protege as part of this group if we want to, because he could basically do the exact same thing. And even using him as kind of a litmus test to basically establish what Hope Summers and Synch are capable of, there was a point in Marvel Comics when Protege copied the powers of the Living Tribunal, and the only option the Living Tribunal had to defeat that guy was to basically absorb him. There was no conceivable way to overpower him, because for every ounce of magical energy or reality warping or what have you that the Living Tribunal used, Protege was able to match it and then counter it. And so in this circumstance, there's no reason to believe that Hope Summers and Synch can't do the same thing. But coming in at number 4 on our list, and anybody who knows anything about this YouTube channel knows we had to include this guy. We had to include this guy. You had to know this was coming. My man, Jim Jaspers. Now, I love Jim Jaspers. You talk to anybody who's been watching this channel for any measure of time, and they knew this guy was going to be on this list. Jim Jaspers was on just see, this is when we start moving away from guys who can like do stuff on a universal scale to guys who can do things on a multiversal scale. So Jim Jaspers existed in 2 forms. The first was Earth 238, and the second was the main Marvel Universe. It involved a story called Captain Britain, which was basically kind of okay. What ended up happening is that when Captain Britain was sent to Earth 238 to face off against Jim Jaspers, the reality is he was never going to defeat him, and he really wasn't supposed to. It was supposed to give him some understanding of what Jim Jaspers was capable of, because the main Marvel Universe version of Jim Jaspers was more powerful than the version that was on Earth 238. But the Jim Jaspers on Earth 238 basically created a being called the Fury that could essentially understand and then adapt to the powers of anybody that it went against. And it was tasked by Jim Jaspers with killing all the superheroes on Earth. Now, I know that doesn't really necessarily seem like an incredible feat. Check this out. So by a series of circumstances that are basically just too complicated to go through in this video, what ended up happening is that you basically had an attempt to bring back superheroes on Earth in the Earth 238 universe. This led to Jim Jasper's initiating something called the Jasper's Warp, which literally started warping and distorting the entirety of reality to the point that his entire universe had to be destroyed in order to keep it from impacting and even affecting the rest of the multiverse. Because had the Jasper's Warp gone unchecked, it would have distorted, twisted, and then eventually destroyed the whole multiverse in Marvel Comics. Now, switch over to Captain Britain facing off against Mad Jim Jaspers in the main Marvel Universe. While we didn't really see Mad Jim Jaspers do anything like the Jasper's Warp, what we did see was an insane level of reality warping that was built on top of the fact that he could have destroyed the multiverse. There's literally a point when Captain Britain walks into this guy's office and he's in an infinite expanse of space, and like Jim Jaspers starts snapping his fingers and reality starts shifting around Captain Britain to the point where he's like a little kid in school, and like it's all these crazy things, but the guy's hopelessly outmatched. Remember like during the events of Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, when you basically had like the Guardians of the Galaxy who caught up to Thanos on the celestial head Nowhere, and everything basically looked like it was fine, but then he used the reality stone and then it showed that everything was like in flames. Imagine it happened like that in the blink of an eye, and that's the power of Jim Jaspers. He could just do it on a whim. He doesn't need an Infinity Stone to be able to perform that level of reality warping. That's his power. That's how capable he is. Coming in at number 3, the Chaos King, Amatsu Mikabashi. This guy was nuts. This dude was basically kind of a facsimile or a harbinger or a herald, if you want to call it that, of the cosmic entity Oblivion. As we said at the beginning of the video, we're not including cosmic entities here. So because this guy is not a tried and true cosmic entity, we can throw him on the list. But Amatsu Mikabashi, right, the Chaos King, this guy killed every god across the multiverse. Every single one, they all fell. The cosmic entities, the whole 9 yards. And in fact, this guy almost destroyed the entirety of the multiverse. The only reason why he wasn't destroyed is because Hercules was basically empowered by the multiverse itself to essentially defeat the Chaos King. And so Hercules basically came out on top. But this guy was capable of eradicating every god and cosmic entity across the entirety of the multiverse. Every single one. It was cool to see him do that with just that level of power, but I gotta tell you guys, this dude has nothing on the top 2 on our list here. So coming in at number 2 is Pre-Retcon Beyonder and Molecule Man. Now, everybody who's familiar with comics knew that these guys were gonna be in like the top 3 at the very least. I imagine you probably suspected they would be number 1. Number 1 is a whole different beast. This guy is just, our number 1 guy is just god tier. So here's the thing about this. In Marvel Comics, you have what are called retcons, retroactive continuity. This is basically when a writer will go in and they will change the history of a character or modify them in some way so that their history is not the same as it had always been. The reason why I say this is because in Marvel Comics, the Molecule Man and the Beyonder exist in 2 forms: pre-retcon and post-retcon. Pre-retcon is when they were their most powerful. So the way this played out is that in Marvel Comics, you've got a universe, then you have the multiverse, which is a collection of universes, and beyond that, you have what's called the Beyondverse. I know, it's not a very unique name, bear with me here. The whole gist behind this is that in the Beyondverse, you have what are called Beyonders. These are beings of just unfathomable power, astronomical power. They're still not as powerful as the number 1 guy on our list, but they are incredibly powerful. The idea behind the Beyonders, though, is that they're basically confined to the Beyondverse. They can't really enter into the main Marvel universe. But there was only one exception when this happened, that there was a man on Earth named Owen Reese who was basically performing an experiment at a company called Acme Atomic Corporation. What he ended up doing was inadvertently creating a cosmic cube, basically taking energy from the Beyondverse and then releasing it into the main Marvel universe. Now, where this happens whenever somebody creates a cosmic cube, it usually goes into a containment cube, which people then use to do all kinds of crazy things in Marvel Comics. Because there was no containment cube, half the energy went into Owen Reese and the other half of the energy just flew out into space and then eventually became sentient, and that's how you get the original Secret Wars in 1984. The important thing behind this is that because Owen Reese was imbued with the power of the Beyonder, which we're not going to go into all the stuff that was done with this character in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers New Avengers, but because of the fact that he was imbued imbued with all the power, or at least some of the power of a Beyonder, there was basically nothing that he couldn't do. That this guy had just insane levels of power. And in fact, where Owen Reese's full potential was unlocked in Secret Wars 1 in 1984 and Secret Wars 2, which was written shortly after, that the full totality of Owen Reese's power was used when he went toe-to-toe with the Beyonder, who was slightly more powerful than Owen Reese. But the battle between the two sent shockwaves across the multiverse, and that's the power of these guys. These guys have the ability to alter the very fundamental structure of the multiverse itself. All cosmic entities fell before these guys. The Living Tribunal, Galactus, Eternity, Infinity, every version of them, except for the Living Tribunal. There's only one Living Tribunal in the whole multiverse, but every cosmic entity that existed in every universe across the multiverse fell before the power of these guys. But even they are not as powerful as our number one guy, also known as Clyde Wang, the Marquis of Death. So this guy is a beast. This guy is just an absolute hoss. So check this out, just to give you guys perspective on how powerful he is. The Clyde Wang basically comes from what we call the real world in Marvel Comics. So if you could read about this world in which you live right now in Marvel Comics, it would be Earth 1218, I think is what the numerical designation is. The important thing here is that in his reality, Clyde Wang was the only person with powers, and he had the ability to alter reality. When his father died, he basically resurrected him subconsciously. His mom freaked out, hit him over the head with a candlestick, and left him being wheelchair bound and in somewhat of a semi-conscious vegetative state. The only thing this guy cared about when he was basically being left in a hospital to be taken care of by various nurses were his comics. When those were taken away, this guy reached into the main Marvel universe and summoned every single superhero, including Galactus, to his reality. Just brought them in, and like quite literally everything was popping off, and Galactus just immediately started to consume Earth and the real world. Now eventually everything's sorted out, and Clyde Wang is basically taken to a place by Reed Richards where he's just kind of put in this machine. Well, he'll just dream happy dreams until his body just shuts down of old age. But there's an alternate reality where all that stuff happened the exact same way, except basically a whole bunch of villains, one of whom was the Molecule Man Owen Reese, who we just talked about, that basically showed up to where it was that Clyde Wang was being held and then broke him out. Clyde Wang immediately unleashed a wave of psychic energy that killed everybody there. He then took off into the time stream and disappeared for a few billion years. So what ends up happening is he comes back to the present day, and you find out Clyde Wang is actually the guy who taught Dr. Doom everything he knows, and is pissed off about the fact that Dr. Doom has always lost to the Fantastic Four. So when Dr. Doom goes to challenge this guy, Dr. Doom basically leads the entirety of Earth's superheroes against the Marquis of Death, which is what Clyde Wang is calling himself now, and literally all the Earth's superheroes ultimately end up killing the Marquis of Death. Reed Richards is of course killed in the process. Dr. Doom marries Susan Storm, and after about 5 years has led Earth into a utopia, at which point Susan Storm asks, "Are you satisfied with everything?" And Dr. Doom says, "Yes, I'm finally content." And then it's revealed none of that happened, that the Marquis of Death had altered reality in such a way to where he tricked Dr. Doom into believing that this great big huge battle had taken place, and Dr. Doom had single-handedly saved not just the universe, but the multiverse, because the Marquis of Death was a guy who was powerful enough to wipe out whole universes with a wave of his hand. And that in reality, 5 years had not passed. It had been 5 minutes. He ends up turning Dr. Doom's heart to stone, his blood to acid, takes him through a time portal, drops him off 3 some odd million years into the past, where Dr. Doom gets eaten by a megalodon shark. Now, the rest of the story kind of unfolds its own way, but it turns out the only being across the entirety of the multiverse that can possibly stop Clyde Wang is actually Clyde Wang. So what they end up doing is going and getting the version of himself who originally appeared that was taken to the machine where he would dream happy dreams forever until his body fell apart due to old age, and that version faces off against the Marquis of Death. And because this battle had weakened the Marquis of Death in such an extreme way, the newly returned Dr. Doom kills the Marquis of Death. Don't ask how Dr. Doom returned, it's comic book logic. But with that being said, guys, that's our list. Let me know who you would have put at the #1 spot. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.